Yo, what's up, everybody? Good to see everybody in the house here today. Going in raw, only the 30-second countdown. Yeah, today we're just chilling. I know people will be funneling in right now. And I just wanted to watch a little bit of the Piers Morgan and DeSantis interview, do some commentary on it before I go over to Joe's channel, because I'm heading over to Joe's channel in like 30 minutes. So I just want to do that, hang out today. I wasn't actually playing the stream because I was working on a lot of other stuff, but said, you know what, YOLO, fuck it, let's do it. Let's get into it. So let's hang out. We're going to get into it. It's going to be a pretty casual day today. Like I said, pretty short one, but good to see everybody in the house today. What's up, Arshad? What's up, Alcron, Patrick, Leaf Lovers, Motive, Moby Toby, what's going on? It's good to see the people that are here, like the OGs that are here. Even when I random stream during the day unannounced, you know, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So yeah, no, I just saw there was an interview with Piers Morgan and DeSantis. I see it just dropped like the other day. And I think it's where he maybe announces the presidential run. So definitely want to just watch that through, make some commentary on it, you know, all that good stuff. Then head over to Joe, where we can boomer everything. You're the reason we sold everything we owned and moved to do what we wanted. Awesome. Dude, that is so amazing. I love hearing that. I really love hearing that. Frankly, anytime you're out there doing what you want, being happy, saying, fuck it, I'm it, you know, I'm out, I'm getting out, whether you move from, you know, California to Texas or to Florida, or whether you moved out of the country like I did, whatever you're doing, as long as you're seeking that path, that long-term path towards long-term happiness, I'm for you. I'm backing that. So fuck yeah, love to hear that. Barnes rant on DeSantis. Yeah, I haven't seen any of this yet. So this is I just remember it's morning here in Seoul, so I have not seen anything. I have not watched any other content creators on this. I'm obviously gonna have to talk to Joe about his take on this. But anyways, let's get right into it and let's just watch it together. Some of you may not have seen this, so here we go. This is just the Piers Morgan interview here, and we'll be just chatting and hanging out on the side here. So we'll just be doing this for the next 30 minutes. Let's go.
Like most cities in the world right now, and most countries in the world, they're all
okay. So first of all, this is the first time I'm seeing this, that he's expected to run for U.S. president in 2024. So they're just coming out and saying it. And by the way, you don't put this out unless you've gotten permission to put this out. So this is sort of a thing where he must have gotten beyond that. Why interview with Piers? Well, you know who else interviewed with Piers? In case you didn't know, there was this guy who interviewed with Piers Morgan. I think his name was Donald J. Trump. If you don't remember that one, right? If you guys don't remember that one, so obviously that's a run up there. Anyways, let's watch this.
Question: who's this guy, Ron DeSantis? Are you aware of this?
I am, and we've been able to see a little bit of that. And look, I have the privilege of being the governor of one of the most dynamic jurisdictions in the world right now. If you look over the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of people that have decided to move to Florida, just visit Florida, or even just look to Florida for inspiration has been unlike anything we've seen in the state's history. So we've got a lot of tremendous people here. We've got a lot going on that's positive, and we're not afraid to lead the way.
I want to start with a positive quote, which you're going to really like, and then move on to some negatives that other people have said. So It's going to start well, this, okay? This is from a guy called Richard Littlejohn. He writes for the Daily Mail newspaper in the UK. Also,
we know what the Daily Mail is. Don't worry.
Florida resident for many decades.
Florida resident, okay.
And he wrote this recently. DeSantis is living proof that when conservatives govern as conviction conservatives, committed to freedom, light regulation, low taxes, strong borders, and proper policing, and don't crumble in the face of militant wokery, voters lap it up. What's your response to that first? Well, is that a good categorization of why you think you've been successful?
I think all that's true. I think, you just think of environment. We've done more on conservation for Everglades, but this is like things that really matter to people. I'm not trying to control their lives. I'm just trying to make the environment better. Crime, we're law and order. We are not dealing with letting criminals out or going soft. I actually removed a Soros-backed prosecutor from Tampa who said he wasn't going to follow the law. COVID, we made sure that we protected people's freedoms. People knew they could come here and do well. And yes.
Yeah, I know there's no notifications. Of course not.
We have one of the lowest per capita tax burdens in the country, lowest per capita debt burdens in the country, and the largest budget surplus in the history of the state. We have more people, significantly more people employed today than we did pre-COVID.
Piers is a cuck, by the way. I totally agree with that.
Their pre-COVID employment levels. And so I think what we've done is worked, and I think people have responded positively.
All this has made
and by the way, I'll comment. I'll get you guys comments as we go here. I'm trying to try, since I do have a thing with Joe, I'm going to try to just run it and kind of talk a little bit over it. But yeah, no, I'm agreeing with most of y'all in the chat here.
Very popular in Florida. I mean, just anecdotally, being here for a few days, I've been completely stunned, frankly, by the amount of adulation you get from Floridians. But as your star has risen, as you know, out have come the knives. This is from Vanity Fair. They said you're a wannabe autocrat, already governed the Sunshine State like a banana republic. You're the Genghis Khan of social issues, using every opportunity to target and demonize groups that have already been targeted and demonized throughout history. Trevor Noah called you an ignorant racist. Stephen Colbert, a gaping bleep. Seth Meyers said you were cruel, sadistic, stupid, repulsive, ghoulish. When you see this kind of hatred, what it says to me as a journalist who's covered a lot of presidential runs and political maneuverings is that it means that people are getting a bit worried about you.
I think it's right. I think they see me over the target. I'm obviously coming at it from a different perspective than they like to see. Those are all people on the left and sometimes far left. But here's the thing. I think the reason why I won the biggest landslide in the history of Florida for governor's race is because that criticism is so far removed from the reality. There's legitimate things we can
that's true though,
for, including me. But when you start talking about being an autocrat, all I do is I look at my constitutional powers and I govern in a way to advance the principles that I believe in.
Florida is definitely down for DeSantis. He definitely did a good job in Florida. The question is the presidential run.
Governor. I mean, you know, during COVID, I was the #1 governor.
Yes,
being
that's true.
I criticized you.
There you go. And
I
that's
discovered today, I checked what I tweeted about you historically.
There you go.
And I found a tweet, I think in 2021.
Yep, here you go.
It looked like Florida's record was not going to be good on COVID because you've been one of the first people in America, certainly.
Is he going to admit he's wrong here?
Bring back freedoms for people. And I was quite scathing. I said, this guy's going to have blood on his hands. Actually, it didn't turn out that way.
Whoa. Okay. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna give Piers some credit here, because usually a lot of the problem with a lot of the liberal, the liberal leftist cuck side is they don't admit they're wrong. But actually, I give them a little bit of credit, because honestly, that's the one thing I still focus on is the Rona stuff. That's why I started my channel, because of those horrible regulations. And that's one of DeSantis's biggest W's, regardless of whatever anybody else wants to say. That is the biggest W. And that's what pretty much everybody in Florida remembers, and most people in the United States remember, is that they could go to Florida and be free of this insanity. And it was always a race to the first countries and the first states that would open up. Those had the best perception. So he got ahead on that and ended up winning the PR battle, knowing that this is not going to last forever. COVID is not going to last forever. The lockdown state was not sustainable. It never was. So I think getting ahead of that was a masterful political move. And the fact he admits it, I think is at least a good part, at least as part of an interview. I think it's a very good tactic, particularly to engender yourself to somebody.
You were very bold in a lot of the stuff you were doing, bolder than many other governors, and it turned out in many areas you were vindicated.
Well, here's the thing: excess mortality, lowest in the Sun Belt, even lower than New York and California for all-cause excess mortality, and then of course economically and freedom, we've done way better. Now, listen. I was very concerned about COVID because I've got more elderly than just about anyone. I've got 4,000 long-term care facilities. I've got condos with seniors stuffed in them all across. So and I'm a tourism state. So this was a huge existential threat to Florida.
One of the other criticisms that's used against you is about your personality. It probably comes from people who don't know you very well, because those who do, who I've spoken to, tell a different story. But you're being depicted in some of the national media as very intense, quite boring, charisma devoid. Someone
low energy,
and said he would launch any charm offensive unarmed.
Well, I appreciate the knocks on the book. Actually, it's the #1 book in America, far and away. I've sold more than any non-president in the history of the country in terms of the first week. So we've been doing pretty good. A lot of people like it.
Does a hostile New York Times review help sales?
Yes, with conservatives, of course it does. Yes. So here's the thing. I think there is. These are people who are in the political class, journalist class, politicians in like DC in particular, they get mad. I don't do the cocktail parties. I don't like rubbing elbows with other people. I like doing my job and then spending time with my family. That's just what I do. A lot of the people that are criticizing, they would say, oh, he doesn't do well with donors. He doesn't glad hand with them. And yet I raise more money than any non-presidential candidate in the history of America. Are you kidding me? So we tend to do, we do well. But I do think that, I deal better with regular people than I do with some of the people in the political class.
Your book, you start with a quote from...
By the way, okay, let me answer this one real quick. So early life check. So would you recommend putting 200 acres of family land split between 4 kids into a trust, LLC, or S Corp? Have rental properties on it, been off the books for years, dad passing responsibility to us. I'm worried about showing income taxes. Brother, this is exactly the question you need to ask of a local attorney. I have no idea where you're at, what your assets look like, or anything else. That's a very specific question. There's different advantages, right? So just generally the advantages of a trust, depending on the state, is you're not going to have to go through the testate process, right? So you're not going to have to go and process that. Of course, you would also get the same benefits if you shove that into an S Corp, but you might deal with some taxation issues, particularly depending on your state. There might be some particular tax issues you're going to hit on the S Corp, and the yearly payouts you're going to have to do with that, the pass-through taxation on that. So that's something that I am fully unequipped to answer. Because it's going to be so specific, but each has its own advantages to mitigate it. The thing I would say you don't do for sure is leave it in your personal name without putting it one of those 3 things. So definitely get that done. I would look at trust in the S Corp. By the way, an LLC and S Corp can be the same thing, right? You can have an LLC take the S Corp election. So there you go. You might be able to combine those 2 options, but speak to somebody in your state. Good question, though. Here's $1 from my based Asian MAGA. There you go. Anytime. Representing here in Seoul.
So Winston Churchill, the greatest of all Britons.
The greatest of all Britons.
It's about courage. And it says, courage is rightly considered the foremost of virtues, for upon it all others depend. Why did you choose that as the quote to kind of set up the book?
Because I think what I've been called upon to do as governor is make the right decisions when it wasn't easy. I've got to do what's right, and I've got to stick by that, and I've got to be willing to take the arrows. And I think we need more of that in terms of our leaders now.
Is Churchill a hero of yours?
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, he saw the danger very, very early on. He spoke out, and he rallied Britain in a very difficult time. And I think he was just very inspirational. He's a strong leader, of course, but he had a way with words. I mean, how you say these things to really stir people's patriotism, emotions, I think it's something that I've always admired.
You've achieved a lot in Florida, and you had this thumping win. 1.5 million more people voted for you second time round as governor. An amazing validation of what you've been doing. Could you do that nationally?
I think you could. I think one of the things that was interesting about my election is the voters in Florida overwhelmingly thought the country was on the wrong track, but they thought Florida was on the right track. Right. We're very tough on crime. The policies in Washington are to be more weak on crime. We believe in good stewards of the environment, but I don't want to control everyone's behavior with some of the stuff that's going on. And we have really fought against the woke ideology.
What I want to know
there we go. That part is good. That part is good.
About your upbringing. I know your father was a Nielsen TV engineer for TV ratings.
Because back then you had to put the box on the television sets.
And he was physically doing that. And your mum was a nurse. And they still live in Dunedin, I think, in
Dunedin, Florida.
Dunedin.
Founded by Scots.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Tell me about them and about the influence they've had on you.
So my father is from Western Pennsylvania, in a town called Aliquippa. That's a steel town. His father worked in the steel mills. My mother's from Youngstown, Ohio, another steel town. So this is blue collar, gritty, religious, patriotic. My household values really reflected that working class upbringing.
This is definitely like
instilled in me is
this is definitely
country, trusted God,
preparatory
really
for presidential run.
You don't get anything
interview for
you
sure.
In this life.
The other question I do is look in the mirror every day and think, am I about to do something my mother will either like or dislike?
There you go.
Do you have that same
absolutely
guiding
feminism in South Korea is a very specific question, but it's nowhere on the same level as in the United States. So I can answer this later or probably on my Asia channel, but it's not the same situation.
Supportive of him in a way.
It's not even close.
Yeah, I think what's happening there is outrageous. It's political posturing by the SDA and so on in New York, and they should be focused on more important things. But you also repeated twice you didn't have any knowledge of hush money being paid to porn stars. Was I right to feel that there was a slightly censorious tone to that kind of thing is just not anything you would ever get involved with?
Well, I think there's a lot of speculation about what the underlying conduct is that is purported to be it. And the reality is that's just outside my wheelhouse. I mean, that's just not something that I can speak to. So, I hope it doesn't come to where you end up seeing this going forward. I mean, look, if you are a very strident prosecutor, and this guy's on the left, and you're not prosecuting a lot of crimes, Manhattan's gotten less safe, you're going to go after somebody on the other side.
Well, this is true.
Some novel offense. That just does not inspire confidence, and people see that as weaponizing the justice system. So
see, here's my thing. Why would you not say that when you were interviewed the other day? So here's the thing. Like, I think this is an accurate statement, but he should have said that the other day when they asked him about Trump. Why not? Like, I do have a problem that he didn't bring that up the other day. He should have immediately said, this is a weaponized prosecution. This is bullshit. If he's with this war on Soros prosecutors, bring it up when it was brought up to him the second time. Now he wants to bring it up on the Piers Morgan interview, probably because he saw the pushback and said, oh shit, people don't like this. So, I should say something, right? Vindicator's writer said he took notes and he had a better answer this time. Yeah, he definitely knows he fucked up, because it's a clear fuck up to seem like you're okay with people prosecuting Donald Trump. That's the problem here. You definitely had to walk that back.
I think it's fundamentally wrong to do that. And, I just made it be known. But we'll see. Maybe it won't come to that. I mean, we haven't seen anything firm yet.
Does personal conduct in any leader politically in America, does it matter how you behave as a leader?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, what a leader, you really want to look to people like our founding fathers. Like, what type of character? It's not saying that you don't ever make a mistake in your personal life, but I think what type of character.
I mean, Benjamin Franklin was fucking whores. Really, so, I mean, there's that.
George Washington, because he always put the republic over his own.
Not that that's a mistake, by the way. I'm just saying, like, they had crazy personal lives.
Washington surrendered his sword. George III said, well, if he surrenders,
not intrude into private grief. Without him, we could have had King Piers.
That's right.
By now.
But George III said he's the greatest man in the world if he gives up power. And so I think the personal is more about how you handle your public duties and the kind of character that you bring to that endeavor.
How important is truth to you? We live in a world where people talk about my truth as if somehow you can create your own version of the truth. To me, facts are facts. The truth is what it is. It's the truth. People feel.
Jesse James, this is true about every girl, every lady of the night.
Like
you pay them to leave.
A departure from truth being an important factor of leadership.
100%. I mean, look, truth is essential. We have to agree that there's a certain reality to the world we live in. And if we can just create our own facts, then we're never going to be able to agree on anything or never really be able to do policy in a way that makes sense. And so, yes, it's not your truth or my truth. It's the truth.
You went to Yale and Harvard. Was described as a blue-collar kid from Tampa among the communist millionaires. You said you were the only person to leave either of those places more conservative than you started.
I think so. I mean, I wasn't political when I got there, because where I came from, I didn't know if you were Republican, Democrat. When I got there, you had a lot of militant leftism. One of Yale's mottos is "For God, for country, for Yale." But you get in the classroom, no way. I mean, it was very anti-religion, particularly Christianity, and very anti-Americanism, and really.
Well, that's very true in the universities. I mean, we're seeing that right now with the protests for the Michael Knowles speech. Where the fuck is that? Purdue. Right. I mean, the universities are a complete wash. And I've had this debate with some of my followers and some people who'd say, OK, we can save the universities. We have to fight for the universities. I'm not a fan of that. I frankly think they're so far gone that it's easier to burn them down and to rebuild it. That's my personal belief on the universities. So I would say, fuck universities and fuck the university system and the education system. It needs to, the public university education system is so corrupt that the only way to fix it is to completely destroy it and rebuild it. Right. That's my personal take on that there.
The day. And I kind of rebelled against that because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm proud to be an American.
Harvard and Yale particularly, yes.
In any other country, perhaps. And so this is something that I rejected. And then by the time I got to Harvard, I was already set. They weren't going to change me.
What's extraordinary is to watch the way campus sort of ideology has gone. I mean, if it was bad then, it's immeasurably worse now. This woke ideology has got a grip, not just in America, but in the UK and around the world.
It's not good for them because when they get into the real world, their assumptions have never been questioned. You should want your assumptions questioned. A university is about pursuing truth. It's about rigor and academic integrity and giving people the foundation so they can think for themselves and be citizens of the republic, not to impose ideology. We want there to be free speech on campus. We want the professors to come from a wide variety of viewpoints. You can't have every professor having the same leftist dogma in the class. That's not good education.
Right. I mean, I lost a job because I disbelieved Meghan Markle.
There you go.
With her claims of racism against the royal family. I thought, I don't believe it. So I had to leave my job. I mean, it was completely insane.
Which is pretty crazy. But here's the thing. The funny thing is, like, Piers Morgan can get like sort of red pilled. And this is the thing for normies. It's like a very normie problem. It's like they'll get red pilled on one specific issue. They'll be like, oh, I just realized I can't talk about Meghan Markle, right? Oh man, that's weird, right? Oh, I can't say these issues about women or about this issue or about Ukraine, right? But then they'll be like, but also get vaxxed and boosted, right? So they'll still plugging in those NPC thoughts. They're not challenging why they're making you do these things, you know, the overall narrative, right? They're not thinking critically about the laws that are being passed, about the regulations that are being passed, the statutes that are being passed. They're just taking issue with one thing because it impacts them personally without stepping back and looking at issues that don't affect them. Right. I look at issues that impact families, even though I do not have a family or kids, it does not impact me at all. But I still care deeply about what goes on in school boards because I think it is a perversion of the American culture. So once again, you have to get red pilled beyond just what affects you. If you're only looking at what affects you, you're really too narrow in your scope.
Be fired for believing it.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
I mean, it's true.
Although I'll tell you though, my book beat his book.
I'm not an orphan.
#1, and then when I became number
knocked him off, I know.
I was higher than Prince Harry.
We're all very grateful. What do you make of those two? Do you have a view of them?
I don't. I mean, I think that I really respected the Queen. I mean, I think she was really elegant.
Oh, and sorry, by the way, Max is exactly right. Yale and Harvard are private. Both private and public are problems. I think that the only difference is that we're still subsidizing these universities with a lot of government funding, government grants. So even the private universities. So I think that we would still need to pull out all that intermingling and commingling, all the support, anything that's undergirding any of these institutions need to be completely yanked.
And I think her stoicism, and I think it was really good. As the younger generations, it's a little bit more mixed. I mean, that's just the reality.
Are they annoying?
I think for some they are. I mean, look, I'm not involved in that, Malou. I just kind of focus on, but I think for some Americans they can be.
More from Governor DeSantis.
Okay, I'm going to skip forward here because we only got like 10 more minutes before I bounce.
That's when I decided to start looking into some other career choices.
That moment was a pivotal moment in modern American history in many ways, unleashed a whole series of consequences. Would you have done things any differently if you'd been running America at the time? Obviously,
I think Piers is being slowly red pilled, but also he still has a lot of bad takes. But I think that's true for a lot of normies, right? It's true for a lot of people that are just out there and
would you have invaded Iraq?
Seeing things and seeing facts. They're not getting a full picture.
So clearly, we had to go to Afghanistan, knock off the Taliban, and decimate Al Qaeda. I would not have stayed in Afghanistan for what we did. I mean, the idea that we were going to turn that into a democracy, it's just a different culture, and they're organized differently. And then I think in Iraq, what I saw there was, you said democracy when Saddam was removed. These are people cozying up with the Iranians. And so we now have a situation where Iraq is basically an Iranian satellite, and Iran has probably been our most significant adversary, certainly in that region, since the Shah fell. So in hindsight, I mean, I honor everybody's service because I think they did a lot of great things. But in hindsight, has the Middle East gotten better as a result of that? I think Iran's gotten stronger as a result of that conflict.
You spent some time at Guantanamo Bay, obviously a very contentious entity in many ways. Barack Obama campaigned in 2008-09 to close it and didn't, still open today. Clearly a lot of very bad people went there, but we now know there were some who were detained for over a decade and were innocent people. You were there in a legal capacity. Did you have any qualms about what was going on there, about holding people that long without trial?
Well, I think that there should have been military commissions. I did support that. But what I saw, because there was a media narrative about they were being mistreated in Gitmo, what I saw was basically a professionally run prison. And there was different kind of categories. So the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is going to be in like a maximum security. Some of these other guys were like open air, play soccer all day, who were viewed as less of a threat. But what they're trying to figure out is, okay.
Thank you, Steve C. on Local, contributing to the Fight Milk Fund.
Are they going to engage in terrorism against? And it's hard to know definitively. So I think they tended to err on the side of caution. Now, I will say, these detainees would all say, they all said they're Quran salesmen. Like every one of them was a Quran salesman. And that clearly wasn't the case either.
Did you have any issues as a lawyer with people being held that long without any trial?
But it's a tough thing when you have a situation with terrorism and war, because they're not a nation state, and how you can't try them, I think, in a civilian court. So you really need military commissions. I actually thought I was going to be involved in military commissions, and they really just sputtered. They didn't get off the ground. They should have had those up and running, and it's some due process, but it isn't what you would get in a civilian trial.
The Washington Post did a big deep dive on this today, actually, about what you did out there. One of the things they said was that you authorize the use of force feeding.
That's some of the. Yeah, that's not true. Yeah, any of the stuff that people
just to finish it, force feeding to detainees who were on hunger strike. Was that true?
So I was a junior officer. I didn't have authority to authorize anything. There may have been a commander that would have done feeding if someone was going to die, but that was not something that I would have even had authority to do.
So that's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you learn? You then went to
that's not necessary to like go through. It's like kind of bullshit.
Troops died that year than.
But also, look, I mean, that's sort of a thing, with prisoners. It's like, are we supposed to let the prisoner die? Like, okay, you have two choices: let the prisoner die of starvation or force feed them, right? I mean, there's an argument, and can be an argument for letting people die, but then again, committing suicide is technically illegal, right? So it's a weird area. It's a weird thought experiment there. I know there's some people would say, hey, if they don't want to eat, just let them not eat, and eventually they'll either die or whatever.
Yeah, in since World War II, I think. So really incredibly dangerous and a lot going on. You were there as a legal counsel to the commander of Navy SEAL Team 1. Yep. And obviously the SEALs weren't as well known as they are, I guess, now. But an incredibly demanding job, I would think, under a lot of pressure. What did you learn about yourself while you were doing that?
Well, it's interesting. So, we had folks all across Al-Anbar province. So like the headquarters was Fallujah. We had Ramadi, Al-Assad, Haditha, Hit, all these places. And there were operations every night. And, they tend to work at night. And so you're just crazy out one day after another for a 6.5 month period. But, at the end of the day, I mean, honestly, I kind of felt honored to be there, because these were some of our best people that I was able to kind of hitch a wagon with, and they were making a good difference. By the time we left, there were not Americans dying in Al-Anbar province anymore. I mean, Al-Qaeda in Iraq had been crushed. The Anbar awakening had happened. And most of the deaths at that point, probably 90%, were in the Shia areas with the Iranian-backed forces. So it was a successful deployment, not just our deployment, but the Marines and the Army who were there during that time.
Did you come under any personal attack?
Not anything special. I mean, I would travel from different areas, but what they would do is, like, if you fly in a helicopter, they would do pitch black at night so that they couldn't, shoot it down with an RPG, but they would not go in the daytime.
Still quite an unnerving experience.
Well, you just don't know. I mean, because the thing is, we could defeat them on the battlefield without even blinking an eye, but that wasn't how they were fighting.
Right.
They were fighting to try to say, if you're going convoying from Ramadi to Fallujah, we're going to try to blow up your convoy. And so it's just kind of like, okay, if the number's called, the number's called.
I want to talk to you about another war, Ukraine. I was surprised, I'll be honest with you, by what you said last week about Ukraine, describing it as a territorial dispute. It's picked up a lot of blowback, as you know. I'm only surprised because of your military background and because you were on record as helping Ukraine after the invasion of Crimea. Do you regret actually just using that one phrase?
Well, I think that it's
a territorial dispute.
I think it's been mischaracterized. Obviously, Russia invaded that. That was wrong. They invaded Crimea and took that in 2014.
Right.
That was wrong. What I'm referring to is kind of where the fighting is going on now, which is that western border or eastern border region, Donbass, and then Crimea. And
which we have fucking nothing to do with.
That I don't think legitimately, but they've had. There's a lot of ethnic Russians there, so that's some difficult fighting. And so, whatever the conflict area, that's what I was referring to. And so, it wasn't that I thought Russia had a right to that. And so, if I should have made that more clear, I could have done it. But I think the larger point is, okay, Russia has not shown the ability to take over Ukraine, to topple the government, or certainly to threaten NATO. That's a good thing. They've been weakened. You now have the fighting in those areas. I just don't think that's a sufficient interest for us to escalate more involvement. I would not want to see, American troops involved there. But the idea that I think somehow Russia was justified, and that's nonsense.
And I was in Ukraine interviewing President Zelensky last summer. What I was struck by was the utter resolve of the people there, which I suspect.
Okay, that's some bullshit.
With somebody
that's some bullshit.
Part of America, which was not to give Putin an inch. Not an inch. In fact, they wanted Crimea back. And I think they would take issue with it being categorized.
Yeah, so as I say, I think they have the right to that territory. I just think that's the source of the conflict. It's in those regions, which there's likely going to continue to be a lot of conflict on that going forward. So if I could snap my fingers, I'd give it back to Ukraine 100%. But the reality is, what is America's involvement in terms of
that's a good point there.
Weapons and certainly ground troops, I think, would be a mistake. So that was the point I was trying to make. But Russia was wrong to invade. They were wrong to take Crimea.
What's your view?
Okay, so we'll cut it there because there's a super chat here I want to answer, and then I got to head over to Joe's stream here. Early Life Check says, as a fellow Floridian, what are we to make of Ron? He's mostly a good governor. He comes across as like he has handlers, very robotic, almost uncanny Valley-esque. I don't like his war position either. Return to Bush 2.0. Well, I mean, the position he just articulated there, I actually agree with, right? And look, I call balls and strikes. I mean, I know people are like, they try to get on Team Trump or Team DeSantis. I'm not about that fucking life. That's somebody else. It's issue. So right now we talk about Ukraine. What he just said, if that's his true foreign policy, yeah, I support not fucking with Ukraine. If he really means that, and he didn't say it though, but he didn't say here's my proposed action, right? But if it's me, I'm like, fuck Ukraine. I say it actually, I would go further than he said, right? I think he kind of pussyfooted about it. I said we should have never been there in the beginning, never been there in the first place. America has zero interest in that. That is NATO's fight. It has nothing to do with us. It is a dispute between Russia and its former fucking colony, right? In its former defense plan, right? To control the Eurasian steppe, as much of the Eurasian steppe as they can. That's their whole Russian strategy. That's their view on everything else. So look, that's none of our business. We should not be sending billions of dollars over there when we have literal massive infrastructure problems in the United States that could deal with billions of dollars. If you want to hand billions of dollars out, please hand it out in the United States, not abroad. No fucking reason for that. So that being said, that's my foreign policy. So what do I take of him? I mean, he's a good governor, right? So I'm a Floridian, right? When I was there, I lived under DeSantis. He was a very good governor. It's been great under Ron DeSantis in Florida. However, I think when we move over to the national stage, and this is the problem, is people can be excellent governors. You can be a fantastic governor and be a horrible president. Just because you are a good governor does not mean you are a good president. I didn't live in Texas. I never knew Texas under Bush or, any of them. And Jeb Bush was not a horrible governor of Florida, but he wasn't great, right? He was like a meh governor of Florida. I met him once when I was very younger. I think it was with like one of my grandparents at the Chamber of Commerce. But that aside, you can be a good governor, you can be a decent governor and a shitty president. And I think a lot of the moves here he's making, and clearly this is a presidential move. Clearly this is announcing foreign policy. Clearly this is announcing other stuff. It's gearing up that way. It's going that way, which makes a lot of the conflict make more sense. Obviously, I'll stay on top of this. I'll watch. I'll maybe get the rest of it at a different time. I'm going to be heading over to Joe's channel, so I will redirect there. But that's my general take on this, and I'm sure that I will be asked about this on Joe's channel. So at least I'll have a little bit to talk about. Good to see everybody here in the chat. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks. This is really impromptu. I do plan on trying to swing a locals, like a quick locals exclusive probably this afternoon at some point. I'll try to swing that my time, so maybe AM for you guys. But other than that, I will be back Sunday evening for sure. I'll try to see what I can do over the weekend, what I can swing over the weekend for you guys. But thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Thanks for just being red-pilled and fucking awesome. I really appreciate you guys. And thanks for everybody who came out to support me on Camelot stream. Had a lot of fun. Crashed that Fike milk, like really crushed it. And then went out and for dinner and had more raw egg. I actually had sukiyaki and, or sorry, no, not sukiyaki, shabu shabu. And that involves eating raw egg, which was actually hilarious. That being said, guys, peace. Catch you later. See ya.